What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into the heart of soul music. We'll be taking a look at chord progressions, so if you're a producer who is into making soul samples from scratch, you've found the right place, because today we're going to break down 5 of the most essential chord progressions that we can find in soul music, so let's get straight into it. Okay, let's talk about the basics just a little bit before we get into the chord progressions. The most important elements of a soul sample are real instruments like guitars, pianos, basses, and real acoustic drums, and probably the vocals. So if you can find some great vocals or vocal chops, then feel free to use them, or if you have the possibility to record your own vocals or have maybe a singer friend, you can do that as well, because it will probably sound even better. So these are just 2 things to keep in mind that are important for a soul sample. Now let's talk about the most important chord progressions. So we got the progression 1, 4 and 5, then we got the progression 2, 5 and 1. After that, number 3 in this list is the progression 1, 6, 4 and 5. This is probably the most famous one. It's also called the progression of the 1950s, so it's very widespread in the soul music. From there, the second most popular chord progression is 1, 4, 6 and 5. This is basically just another example of the third chord progression that we just talked about, and this chord progression is called the heart and soul progression. Now we move on to the last chord progression that comes straight out of gospel music, and this is the 4, 5, 1 chord progression. So we'll be looking into that deeper when we are inside of FL. So I know there's a lot of beginners and they have no clue what I was just talking about, so just let me explain really quick what these numbers are about. So basically the numbers that you just seen when I was talking about 1, 3, 4, 5 are basically just the grades that refer to the grade of major scale used to build a chord in a progression. So it's nothing really too complicated. Now we'll be going into FL and listen to how this chord sounds and what makes them special and what I would use them for because of the way they sound. So let's jump straight into it. Okay guys, so you can see we are inside of FL. Now we'll be taking a listen to every chord progression I just talked about. I just loaded up a Contact, Grand Piano, the Nor Pure, just on the basic preset. I haven't put anything on it, so it's not even in the mixer channel. No processing at all, just straight piano. Now let's jump into the first chord progression that we just talked about. Already named them here, so you can also see them when we click on them. This is the 1, 4 and 5 chord progression, so we'll be using on here the C major scale, so C major. It's also called Ionian probably, but just a C major to show it to you. To build a chord, it's actually quite easy. You can see here the ghost notes. You just, to not go furthermore into theory, you just skip one of the ghost notes, and that's the way you build the chord. Now let's listen to the first chord progression. It sounds quite happy, right? So if you're going for like a happy vibe, it's probably the chord progression you will choose. Now let's jump into the second one. So this is the second one. So you probably notice it's like sound sad. Either way, we are in a major chord, so in a major scale. That doesn't have to mean anything, because the first chord is actually a D minor chord. You can hear it, it's quite a sad one progression. If you're going for a sad vibe, that's probably the one you would take. Now let's go to the third chord progression. That's the 1, 6, 4, 5, and let's listen to it. So when I listen to this chord progression, this is the 1950s chord progression that we talked about. And if you know about the history where soul came from, that will explain a lot. That would be too much for this video, but basically I think this chord progression just gives hope. So it sounds a little bit sad, but at the same time it gives hope. So if you're going for that kind of vibe, pick this one. Now let's jump to the next chord progression. That's 1, 4, 6 and 5. No, sorry, the 1, 4, 6 and 5. And you can see basically the only thing changing here is that the 4 is coming before the 6, so you can just change these 2 chords and then you get the fourth chord progression. That's also called the heart and soul progression. And let's listen to this one. It It gives basically the same feeling since we're playing the same notes, as these two are basically identical. The only thing that changes are the 4th and the 6th. They just switch places, basically nothing too complicated. It gives me the same vibe as the one before. Let's jump to the last one, and I think this one is really interesting because this is the 4-5-1 chord progression. So we start with the F, because if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, this is the 4th grade. So we start with F, G, C, back to C. So this is a 1. I think this is actually used for ending a song, and you will see why just in a second. So let's listen to it. So this starts building tension right away because we start on the 4 and the 5, and then we go back to the 1, and it releases the tension. So it's a great chord progression to end a song, basically with this, or a sample to keep in mind. And I just wanted to show you basically what you can do with this information right now. So you probably, especially when you're starting out, you might be feeling overwhelmed by this, but this is the start of every sample or song or whatever you're working on at the moment. You will start with the chords, and I think the biggest problem is just to try and find some chords, and it's much easier just to look up some chord progressions, know how to read them. It's not even that complicated, like we just talked about a few minutes ago, and to have a clear idea where to start. Of course, a chord progression will not give you a melody, but that's just a great starting point. I just made here a melody like in 2 minutes before I start recording this video to show you an example of what you can do with the chord progression. So this is a 1-6-4-5 chord progression that we had, like the most famous one in the 1950s, and this is what I came up with. Basically, I just cut the chord. You can see it's the same chord. I just repeated them. I did the same here with the A, same here, just move some notes around, so push them up. You can just push this down and push this up and get the same result. Played this top line here and here, so you can see it's nothing really complicated. This is exactly what will help you a lot, by just having a clear mind, knowing what you're doing, taking a chord progression and start working on that. And I just added here also, I forgot to mention that I added here the bass line, of course, just to give it more depth. Let's listen to how this chord progression turned into something sounds like. So I'll just play everything. As you can hear, it's a very simple chord progression, but it gives you still like a bounce that you want to dance to it. You can hear vocals in it, you can hear a great melody surrounding it. We'll not be finishing the sample in this video. I will save it for the next one, just to show you what you can build out of this. So I'll just play it one more time. That's it, basically. Not much more than that. 5 simple chord progressions. If you're working on soul samples or want to get into it, take one of these and start building a melody around them and see what you come up with. Of course, there are also special scales that got used. I would say special, but like scales that got used a lot in soul music, but that would be like too much theory for this time. There's also another video that will be coming on which scales got used at that time, so stay tuned. Now let's get straight back to the desk. Okay guys, so I know it was a very short video for today, but it's still a very important one, because as you can see, there are just 5 chord progressions. Of course, there are a lot more than that. Don't be like, yeah, these are the only ones that I can use. There's a lot of chord progressions out there that you can have to keep in mind, or you should keep in mind. But just research, do a little bit of research, so you have like a basic foundation on where to start. Because for me personally, I think it's very hard to start like with the chords, especially when you don't know what you're doing. And this is what helped me a lot, just knowing how to read these chord progressions and just pull them into my DAW, start working on them. And it's much easier to come up with the melody when you already have something in your head to work with, or you have like some chords to start with and build out of there. And this is not stealing, because probably every song has multiple chords that are the same, so you can just take ideas from the chord progressions and build something on your own. So if I was able to help you with this video and improve your workflow, like I said, please just leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you can stay updated. I'm trying to upload every week consistently right now. Leave some comments down below if you have any questions. I'm coming back to you as soon as possible. And there's also a link in the video description to my Discord channel, so if you're you're a young producer or you're a producer and trying to link up with some others producers, you're welcome. It's completely for free, so I'm not charging anything. You're welcome. So we can send each other samples, we can give advice on what we can do better, we can share new strategies on how to work and new workflows that will help all of us. You're welcome, and see you next time.